The second vehicle on this evening is the divine cow goddess, who provides all that is necessary for life. During her procession, she carries the goddess Saraswati, patron of learning, music, and the arts. As the festival progresses, the size of the vehicles and their ornaments become grander and more elaborate. The fifth day morning procession features Rishabha Vahana, the white bull mount of Shiva, carrying Lord Chandrasekhar and his consort. Also on the fifth day, there is a blessing of the Kalashams, the sacred finials that sit atop the Gopurams. The sixth day morning vehicle is a silver elephant that leads a procession of the 63 Nayanars. These 6th to 8th century saint poets exemplified the Bhakti movement in Tamil Nadu. They praised the path of devotion and said it was not inferior to the path of knowledge. The Nayanars taught that expansion of the heart through devotional practices leads to a life of charity and service and to the purification needed for union with Shiva. In the evening, Lord Shiva is carried through the streets in his large silver chariot. Throughout the 10-day festival, Brahmins chant the Vedas and perform yajnas and homas, offerings before fire. The Brahmins recite Vedic mantras while performing the yajnas and make offerings of ghee, milk, cakes, and grains. The Vahanas carried on large wooden poles are periodically and dramatically rocked from side to side by their bearers in a display of exuberant joy and devotion. In some contexts, images of deities are rocked back and forth in imitation of a baby cradle. So does anybody have any insight into, beyond what I've just said, as to why they're rocking the Murtis back and forth in that way?
Yeah, just to give a little bit of comfort to the Murtis. Also, you know, the shoulder...
Speak into the...
The shoulder aches, you know, of the...
Well, it's true, it's true. I mean, those things are heavy.
And that is also rocking the Swami. Everyone in a jubilant mood. There is no significance in that, just to make it comfortable.
Yeah, no, I mean, those are
But
massive
the shoulder
poles.
aches because it's quite heavy for people, and then they rotate also.
Yeah. So, but part of it is kind of like rocking a baby cradle?
Yes.
Kind of taking
Yes.
care of the Murti?
Yeah. As if the Lord, you know, they're
He's
trying to
dancing and
please him.
coming
I mean, sometimes it gets a little rowdy.
Oh yeah.
You know, I've been up close to one of those things, and all of a sudden it's like, you're afraid it's going to tip over. And they have to be pretty skilled, those guys. They have to really kind of be in rhythm to make sure, you know, that they don't lose their balance. Because, you know, if that thing falls over, that would be bad. The pujas on the final days of Deepam become grander and grander. Traditional dancers entertain pilgrims in the third prakaram. Musicians perform throughout the festival in and around the main temple. The daily processions of Murtis last late into the night. Each vehicle is equipped with a generator to provide the power needed to light up the Murti. I'm not sure how they did that in olden days before generators. Maybe just candles. These vehicles display Goddess Ambal on her white bird vehicle and her cow goddess mount. The main Shiva image is called Utsava Murti and is made from a combination of gold, silver, copper, zinc, and tin.
They would carry wooden poles in front of the murtis, and at the tip of it, they would just take a cloth and tie it around it and dip it in kerosene.
Oh, okay,
and
like a
light
kerosene
that
torch.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's what they used.
It was
Okay.
still, I think it is still, that's the method that's followed in some of the temples, which doesn't have so much money like Arunachala temple. So that's what they still do that in the...
Yeah, and I've seen with some of the smaller murtis on, you know, not great feasts, but, you know, processions, sometimes they'll use those kerosene torches still.
Before kerosene, it used to be ghee torches.
Oh, ghee, yeah. Kerosene smells, but ghee burns very,
The rich
very pure.
temples
Ghee is
before
much
electricity
earlier.
used ghee.
Ghee was much earlier, then it became kerosene.
Ah, okay.
Since they couldn't afford to buy this.
Well, now they fire up these gas-powered generators and John Deere tractors. It's, yeah.
At Sri Rangam temple, they still use ghee.
Oh, they still use ghee in the Sri Rangam temple.
Yeah.
They're doing it the right way.
It's the sight to see. And the smell and
Yeah. Yeah, the smell of burning ghee is wonderful. Very purifying.
it's beautiful.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. The daily processions of murtis last late into the night. Each vehicle is equipped with a generator to provide the power needed to light up the murti. I mean, they're really bright now. These vehicles display Goddess Ambal on her white bird vehicle and her cow goddess mount. The main Shiva image is called Utsava Murti and is made from a combination of gold, silver, copper, zinc, and tin. It is a substitute for the fire lingam, which is never moved. On the final day of Deepam, the murtis of Shiva and Annamalaiyar Ambal are adorned with regalia, studded with priceless gems of great antiquity and beauty. Inside a protected chamber in the inner temple, specially selected members of an ancient lineage of temple Brahmins take the jewels from their cases and put them in the hands of chosen pilgrims. The pilgrims pass them along with great reverence and wonder to a Brahmin priest who places them with care on the murtis. The seventh day begins the processions of the great chariots. These carved wooden vehicles have been freshly painted for the festival and will bear the Panchamurtis through the 4 large streets that go around the temple. The chariot carrying Ganesha is the first to set out. It's a smaller one. Next is the chariot carrying Lord Murugan and his 2 consorts. This is followed by the Maharadam, the grand chariot of Lord Shiva and his consort. Hundreds of thousands of excited pilgrims crowd into the streets, hoping to experience the powerful darshan of the temple deities. Each chariot is richly decorated with floral wreaths, mango leaves, plantain stems, and various banners and festoons. Thousands of joyous pilgrims carry 2 long metal chains and pull the giant chariots through the streets. According to scholar Susan Bailey, the tour is at once a war chariot, a mobile palace, and a representation of the god's temple. During these festivals, the god or goddess is enthroned on his chur and vested with royal trappings. The great car is then drawn in triumph along its designated procession route. This route is the deity's symbolic kingdom. Temple priests perform pujas high up on the chariots, and pilgrims rain down offerings of flowers. The priests make their entry to the chariots through a special tower. This is also the most popular day for performing the sugarcane cradle vow. It is a common belief that couples will be granted a child by Lord Shiva if they vow to carry the newborn infant around the temple in a cradle made from a pristine silk sari tied to sugarcane. It is especially auspicious to perform the cradle vow during Maharadam. Early on the 8th day, the Deepam cauldron receives puja in the 4th courtyard with the temple elephant in attendance. Tradition then mandates that men of the fishing caste lash it to wooden poles and carry it out of the temple and up to the summit of Arunachala. I just wanted to add something about the large chariots that are carried through the streets. I was under the impression, since I'd never witnessed it myself, I'd just seen it on film, that it was a continual movement of the chariot. In fact, they carried about want to say 50 feet, about 50 feet, and then they stop and take a break. So it's, I mean, it would be just backbreaking work otherwise. So they do get a rest period, and it's nice for the people who are along the route because they get an extended darshan at that point. And then they have these things in the back that are sort of like, these guys hop up on them and they start jumping up and down, and it sort of propels the thing, gets it off the dime, and then they try to pull it from the front. And it's not always successful. Sometimes they have to put that wooden shim back in and do it over again, because it's very, very difficult, especially when you're carrying it up a little bit of an incline to get it started. Once you get it started, then you can kind of make some movement, but getting it started can be very, very challenging. So I was very relieved to see that they didn't have to carry it continuously, like haul that thing continuously around the temple. It was, you know, just in these kind of 50-foot increments or so.
It's actually those things that you described, they're like a lever.
A lever, right.
To sort of push the wheel to start. And you need something in the fulcrum. So they have like a solid block of iron.
Yeah.
That's there. They put it right below the wheel, right behind the wheel, and they put that wooden big poles, and you have people actually walking on it.
Right, and they're jumping up and down.
You don't get the pressure to get the chariot actually start moving.
But they have to jump off at a certain point, or there could be accidents. But I'm told, you know, every once in a while somebody gets crushed by one of the wheels or gets injured in some way, but it's like it's supposed to be this very auspicious way to die. You'll be crushed by one of the vehicles. Not my cup of tea, but I suppose if that's your destiny, that's your pravda. Wicks and ghee are also carried up the slopes. It is backbreaking work, but there is no shortage of volunteers. And of course, they're all barefoot. Later in the morning, Lord Chandrasekhar is taken on his horse Vahana to the large wooden chariot used on the previous day. After this, a piece of darba grass is transferred from the chariot to the murti, symbolizing the transfer of the chariot's accumulated energy back to its originator, Chandrasekhar. Once this residual power has been received by the god, he is taken in procession around the temple streets. In the evening procession, the Panchamurtis ride a large horse Vahana. The horse has a long-time association with mind and air, and symbolizes loyalty, speed, focused effort, and energy. Each deity in the procession carries a whip, symbolizing the mastery of the mind in devotees whose lives have been submitted to the Lord. On the morning of the 9th day, the mount is Purusha Miragam, or man-beast. It is believed this sphinx-like form wards off evil influences and bad fortune, while also washing away sins. In the evening, the Panchamurtis ride the 10-headed Ravana mount. Ravana was a mighty king and warrior who offended Shiva. He suffered great humiliation as a result, and was finally reconciled with the Lord after singing hymns of praise for 1,000 years. He symbolizes the human ego, arrogant and selfish, who endures profound suffering and samsara before surrendering to the supreme reality. In the early morning hours of the 10th day, 5 pots with ghee are lit, officially beginning the dramatic crescendo of Deepam. From these flames, a single taper is kindled and carried throughout the temple. It is kept burning all day. The 5 pots symbolize the 5 elements through which the creation appears. The single flame represents the universal Lord Shiva. When the Kritika Deepam flame is lit at sunset, pilgrims experience the merging of the created universe with the one source, Shiva. The mystery of human life, its emergence, journey, and reunion with the universal one is illumined in the pilgrim's heart. Beginning at dawn on this 10th day, pilgrims of all ages begin their pradakshina around the mountain, starting at the Annamalaiyar temple. Some climb the mountain itself in a demonstration of devotion and endurance. From a distance, they appear as a ribbon of white that moves slowly toward the pinnacle, the focus of their devotion. The path to the top is nearly vertical and passes through small crevices and stones. In spite of thorns that abound on the path, most pilgrims climb the mountain on bare feet. As pilgrims reach the summit, security guards maintain order and move the throngs around the copper vessel that holds the ghee and wicks. Though children as young as 3 and senior citizens join in, the majority of climbers are between 12 and 30. At 6 p.m., just as the full moon rises in the east, the oil is kindled with embers from a flame lit at dawn from the 5 earthen pots. The flame is taken to the top of the mountain by a member of the Parvatha Raja clan, part of the fishing caste. Local tradition said that this clan is descended from a king who was given the honor of lighting the cauldron to ward off a curse. Shiva declares in the Shiva Puranam, "The Linga mountain and I are identical. It brings devotees to me. This linga confers bliss. Viewed, touched, or meditated upon, it wards off all future births. Celebration of chariot festivals, congregation of devotees, the presentation of sacrificial gifts and offerings of prayers at this place shall bring great blessings." Inside the temple's 3rd prakaram, the Panchamurtis are carried out to the Kachi Mandapam, where they can witness the lighting of the fire on the mountain. The Murti of Ardhanarishvara, Shiva as half man and half woman, is brought out to the golden sacrificial altar in front of the inner shrine. Also brought out are the 5 clay pots representing the 5 elements. They are about to witness Shiva's manifestation at the summit of the mountain. Flames from the 5 element vessels are joined together and a great cry arises both on the mountain and in the temple below. Arunachala Shiva, Arohara, Arohara, Arohara. The fire is visible to onlookers from miles away in every direction. Fireworks begin their thunderous booms, and the temple below is lit up for all to see. The fire is kindled even in the midst of a typhoon, which hit the Deepam lighting in 2016. In this scene, one can barely make out the silhouette of the mountain in a few brief moments when the kindled flame emerges from the clouds. Hundreds of thousands.
So I'll relate a little personal anecdote. This was the first time that I had a chance to be there for the lighting of the fire at the top of the mountain in 2016. And a former student and myself and then 2 colleagues from Stetson decided to climb the mountain because I wanted to get footage of the lighting of the pot, or of the copper vessel. So we climbed up, no problem. I'd been training, I've been doing my stairs thing on my treadmill, and we climbed the mountain quickly, no problem. We got up there. The police we told them that we were filming this for American university students, so they treated us like royalty. They gave us chairs to sit on, cups of tea. They gave us little ponchos and everything. They treated us a lot better than they did the locals. Let me put it that way. But then the rain started, and I'm one of those people who pays very close attention to the radar. I'm always looking at the radar and seeing where the storm systems are, and I thought I'd scoped it out. It seemed like the cyclone was coming in, but it was projected to turn like it does in Florida and then go up the coast. So I thought we were out of trouble. Well, it took a turn and went straight across and hit Annamalaiyar about 4 in the afternoon. So the person I was with, we decided, this was a student of mine, and I didn't want her to be like calling her parents and saying, this Dr. Lucas took me out on the mountain and then this cyclone hit and he made me stay up there till dark. So we decided that the discretion was the better part of valor, and we decided to come down the mountain while there was still daylight. We had these little lamps, but I quickly realized they weren't going to be any good in a storm. So about halfway down, everything's fine. We're going down the mountain with thousands of other people. And then disaster struck and my thighs gave out. They became like spaghetti because I hadn't trained going down. I hadn't done enough squats. So, you use certain thigh muscles and certain knee muscles that you don't use walking up. And mine gave out about halfway down the mountain. So it's getting dark, the cyclone's coming in, the rain and wind is getting stronger, and I can't move. There's just nothing here. So I'm looking at my former student, or what are we going to do? I thought I'd have to spend the night on the mountain and just tough it out. I was wishing I had one of those ponchos that the police had let us have up on top of the mountain. And then one of those Arunachala miracles occurred, and these two guys appeared, big strapping young Tamil guys, and they just came up to me. They quickly assessed the situation. They said, "Oh, don't worry about it. That happened to us the first time we came up the mountain too." And they grabbed me by my shoulders and walked me down step by step, in the cyclone. I fell a few times. Nothing and suffered too great a damage, but I was covered in mud. I was wearing white, and I was just completely covered in mud. But they got me down safely. It took about 2-3 hours to go down that last half of the mountain. And when I turned around to thank them, they were gone. And second time, and then fortunately I could walk on flat land. It was just going downhill that I couldn't
How was
do
your
that.
student?
She was fine. She's like 25 and in perfect shape. She's like, "Come on, Dr. Lucas, let's go." She said, "You should have trained. You should have done more squats." Thank you. But we were able to stop and get some chai, and then there was somebody was serving free food along the. That happens during Deepam. People will serve pilgrims free food. And this guy took a liking to us, and I was not hungry. I was, just barely, functioning. But she was famished, so we sat there for an hour while he served her helping after helping of good, healthy Deepam food. But fortunately, I made it home.
Wow.
It's a wonderful story.
That was my Deepam. This one was a little bit less eventful. We were sitting in a very comfortable place on the top of a hotel, beautiful view of the mountain. It was clear. I was able to film it, get a close-up and everything. And I was with a group of people, pilgrims from Malaysia, Tamils from Malaysia. And it was just a very meditative, contemplative, devotional situation, completely different experience this time around. And I was grateful for that. I didn't need to do the
pilgrims will be in Tirunelveli for this one night, so the customary rites must go on, rain or shine. Later that evening, Lord Shiva rides his golden bull Nandi and gives darshan to the assembled pilgrims. This golden vahana was given as a gift to the temple in 2015. The fire in the copper cauldron will be kept burning for the next 10 days. Over 600 kilograms of ghee, 100 meters of cloth, and 4 kilograms of camphor will be consumed for this ritual. On the day following the Mahadipam events, the Panchamurtis, led by Lord Shiva, are taken by tractor for a 14-kilometer ride around the mountain. This rare darshan event happens only during Deepam and Pongal. It gives villagers who have not been able to visit the temple during Deepam a last opportunity to experience darshan. The fire temple in Tiruvannamalai is unique in India. It is considered a mukti sthalam, a sacred site where pilgrims may attain final liberation. A verse in the Skanda Purana says, "I truly abide on earth in the form of an effulgence named Arunachala, for bestowing the attainment of liberation. Know that it is the heart of the world. It is truly Shiva himself. It is his heart abode, a secret holy region." The many millions who visit the temple each year come for a feast of fellowship, communion with their Lord, the fulfillment of prayers, and spiritual transformation. The pilgrimage only grows in popularity with each passing year.
All right, so that's it. Does anybody have any questions or contributions?
I have a question.
Sure.
So going to India, I experienced Pongal, and in China we always have a different day for the moon that we count for New Year's, Chinese New Year's. It's always either in January or February.
Yeah, it's the new moon.
Is that how it is with Pongal too?
Pongal's always on the same day.
It's on the same
It's the
day?
beginning
Is
of
it January 14th?
No, sun travels to the north.
Harvest.
But it
That is
it has to
Pongal.
do with the Hindu lunar or the solar calendar,
Yeah.
and so it's always the 15th of the month.
Okay, because it was on my birthday one year, and it was the 14th of January.
Yeah, it's either the 14th or the 15th.
Oh, okay.
But
So
that's
I
the
didn't know
beginning,
if
it's
it
the new
changes
moon of
like
that.
the Chinese New Year.
Or it's actually the beginning of that particular month.
Pongal is actually a Tamil festival.
Yeah.
It's in the
It's like
first.
Thanksgiving, yeah, or not?
It's a time.
No, it is for sun.
Festival.
Harvest are there, but for the sun, it is, the fire is for the sun. If they do it outside, you cook the pongal outside with the sugar cane and everything, and the prayer is for the sun god. He comes to this thing where not Uttarayana.
It's not connected to the
Punya
lunar calendar as much as in like there are 12 months in Tamil calendar, which coincides with the 12 months in English, January to December.
Yeah.
So the month on which it's celebrated is called Thai. The first day of Thai usually happens to be either Jan 14th or 15th.
That's my name.
It's,
There you go.
Thai?
Yes. All right, that explains everything, everybody. I'm done. I can't ask for anything more.
That's why it's not a movable feast, like Chinese New Year. Right, Chinese New Year is the new moon.
Yes.
Between in Aquarius, basically in the zodiacal sign of Aquarius, but this is not connected to the new moon.
Okay.
This is the same day
Yeah, I
every
wondered
year.
if it's changed. Yeah. Okay.
One of the things I noticed was, I thought you might go into the history behind the Kartikeya Deepam festival. And I read about it a little, but I don't know if it can be for sure, but from what I've heard, there's references to the Kartikeya Deepam festival being a big festival in Tiruvannamalai as early as 300 BCE.
Yeah,
So it's
right.
2,500 years old.
Kolkapiam, which is around that time.
Yeah.
At least it was found dated. It could be more than that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would like to do a short documentary, maybe 20-25 minutes on just the Deepam festival. You know, all of the history and so forth. But I just wanted to use in this film as an example of a major festival that is sort of centered in the temple, and out of which the Murtis come, and it's sort of the master of ceremonies is there in the temple, because it's all conducted by priests and these processions and so forth. But there are actually many festivals that are celebrated, and this is just sort of the grandest one. So I just wanted to have a little bit about that to show that it's not only has the daily pujas and daily festivals, but it has these great annual festivals as well. But yeah, that's one of those things that's a little bit open to interpretation, right? The historicity of the festival, but it certainly is attested to in some of the early manuscripts that there was some kind of major festival there. But it would have been around a smaller temple. Yes, the temple was not that size. It would have been, probably maybe the first and second prakarams at that point. Yeah, but thank you for bringing that up. Other comments or questions?
He wants to
This is a little, you all may have heard this. Bhagavan, we know that he's never, after the first time he went and, as you said, he got the special personal visit to the lingam. After that, he never went there through his entire life. But all the devotees, at some point, they made him go inside.
Oh, they did?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, they kind of forced him to go back to the temple, but the main priest inside, he knew. Basically, he encourages whoever comes to the temple to go and meet to go to the ashramam. So he is very much fond of Maharshi. So when they all encouraged Maharshi and kind of forced him, he even forced him not look like himself, so disguise him so that there will be less crowd, less attraction.
Put it on top of it.
Like a Vaishnavite.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Imagine Maharshi like a Vaishnavite. And he went almost inside, but this priest recognized him. And he already started recognizing him, then he went back. Maharshi went back all the way. He never made it back to the lingam again.
So
Am I accurate?
He put a garland on. He said,
Garland on and made him sit and eat food.
He put a garland on him.
On Maharshi.
Yeah. And so Bhagavan he didn't like the attention, so
Yeah.
he left.
Oh, really? Yeah, he was embarrassed. He was
So they were starting to do pujas and everything for him?
Yeah. I have actually a...
Yeah, Bhagavan and Vishnu was
It's on.
What did she say?
Bhagavan comes as Vishnu
He's coming from Vishnu.
because he puts a namam.
One of the satsang
They say that he comes in the form of Vishnu.
The traditions around Bhagavan is that he's some kind of an incarnation of Shiva. As Dr. Murti or something. So it's just
Muruga too.
coming.
Yeah, Muruga too.
Arunachala yoga is sort of the embodiment of Shiva as Lord of yoga, and is resident on the mountain, on Arunachala, maybe in a cave. Various people have gone looking for him, and that didn't turn out well. But he's sort of the spirit of, or the incarnated spirit of Shiva as the Lord of Yoga on the mountain, and appears when he decides to appear to whom he decides to appear. Right, and so this is one of the things that happens when people go in for darshan of the lingam. They see the Arunachala yogi there. Has anybody else had any experience with that?
Is there a photograph of Arunachala yogi, like you can compare and know?
I have seen some representations.
He's not the same as Arunachala.
No.
No.
Personally, I have not seen any picture of him.
There are some pictures, but it's fanciful. It's not based on him. He sat down for a portrait or something.
It's Arunachala yogi, that's what it's like.
Now people do see, you're probably all familiar with this. When you go there and you're just at large and looking at the mountain from various aspects, you see all kinds of things on the mountain. Images will appear to you of various, and some people have seen Arunachala yogi that way. His face will appear, or so there's some kind of entity or being that it's mysterious. I can't explain it.
No, Arunachala Hill is very famous for Siddha Purushas, they can take the form they want, they can appear, they can disappear. All those things are qualities of Siddha Purusha, one of the Siddhi.
Yeah. So that doesn't, thank you for sharing that story, but it doesn't surprise me. Those kind of things happen a lot in various ways, but that's a pretty powerful thing to have happen in the inner sanctum.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else want to share something or have a question or comment or anything like that? Are you ready to take a nap?
You have a very flowing, smoothing voice.
In other words, I put you to sleep.
But not only the pictures, not only the pictures, the narration was good.
Yeah, it was very informative.
Yeah.
Nice flow.
Nice flow. Yeah.
Well, thank you. Yeah, you never know. I'm sure. Yeah. Anyway.
I was just reading about the Annapakshi.
Oh,
I
thank
just
you.
wanted to. Yeah, So it basically says Annapakshi, or the divine swan, is a mythical bird that is often misread to be a peacock.
I fell into the trap.
It says its body and beak resemble a swan, whilst its elegant feathers and crest descend from the peacock. Legend says this mystical white bird flew down to the earth from the heaven, widely known for its purity. Rig Veda states that this bird has, sorry, I'm not wearing my glasses. Rig Veda states this bird has said to have abilities that can separate pure milk from the solution of milk and water.
And a swan can do that, right? Isn't
Yes,
this a
yes.
swan beginning to have that power to be able to separate milk from water?
The underlying theory of this thesis is that the bird has knowledge and wisdom to choose truth over falsehood, virtue over sin, real over make-believe.
Wow. Peacock is the Vahana for Subramanya. Peacock is the Vahana for Subramanya.
That's right, yeah, Murugan, that's his vehicle. Yeah, in the sources that I was consulting, there was sort of this question whether it was a swan or a peacock or one of the two, or both somehow, but that really clarifies it. So it really is a swan. It's just that it has some characteristics in the iconography of the peacock. Yeah. Yes?
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank you so very, very much. Yeah, this is, when we have these retreats, it feels like we're in Shiva Loka. And so, this has just been exquisite. But I'm curious about your sources. And how you were able to gather all this information about the temple.
David Godman asked me that same question, because he's a crack researcher. And he was like, where did you come up with all of this stuff? And basically, I'm a professional researcher. So, you have a certain number of professional tricks, right, in finding sources and so on. But basically, I just spent a lot of time in the temple, talking to people, looking at all of the published sources, some of which were more reliable than others. So if there was something that was questionable, then I would ask priests and local experts. They didn't always agree. As you know, it's India, so it's hard to nail some of these things down. But that's why I want to say it's a work in progress, because sometimes it's fuzzy, as to whether it's this or it's that, and it just sort of depends upon who you ask and what book you consult. So it's an ongoing project of trying to come to some sort of definitive clarity with some of these facts. But I consulted every published source I could find, and I just interviewed lots and lots of people. And sometimes taxi drivers, and just local people who had a certain idea or a certain understanding about things. And sometimes they were my best source.
Yes.
They grew up there, and now my grandmother told me, and my great-grandmother told me.
They know the Sthala Puranams too much. If you hire a if you hire a tourist taxi, those guys really know the minute details and the innuendos and everything they tell you.
Yeah. And everybody has their own unique perspective too,
Yeah.
It's not like any of this is written down, it's some kind of factual. I hope that more scholars, Indian, Western, Asian, will spend more time doing scholarly studies of these temples, because they really deserve it. But there's very little. The Madurai Temple, the Sri Meenakshi Temple, there's some pretty good studies done of the iconography and history there. But in many of these temples, there's very, very little that's been done in a critical scholarly way. And that's really, I don't know who's at fault there, but as a Western scholar, I'm outraged that more people haven't done in-depth, scholarly, definitive work on these temples, because they really are deserving of that. So hopefully we can get off the dime with some of that. And some of it has to do with just the lack of research money. You know, I think ideally you would have Tamil, local Tamil scholars who understand the language and the traditions and are steeped in the knowledge of these things. That they would be the primary scholars, but sometimes you know there's just not enough money for to fund the research.
And these researchers, they are not remunerative to anybody.
No, you don't make money doing this kind of thing. It's not why you do it.
There's no scholarship.
Yeah, and maybe that's part of the Kali Yuga, you know, that people are just looking at it from a monetary, transactional point of view.
Sad, but that's the truth.
But at least the bigger temples have some kind of research. A few years before I had gone to Bhagwan's birthplace, Tiruchuri, the Bhuminatheshwara temple was like so beautiful, and you know, it's one of the things which still maintain its original, you know, tiles and everything, and it was not the garish paint from today of the 20th century, I mean 21st century. It was still very beautiful.
Yeah.
And you know, so those, but it's very well maintained because Ashram had done the Kumbhavishekam. I spoke to the priest and they said they took care of it and all that stuff. But as she said, I think it is, you know, it's not a moneyed profession to do research.
Funding is not available. That's
But I mean, the government, you know, this
And they
BJP
don't-
government is
yeah.
really supporting
Especially
Hindu
Tamil Nadu
culture and
government.
tradition. They should be putting money into this, right? I mean, if they really are believing what they're saying,
No,
they should be
Tamil
funding
Nadu
this kind of
government will
research.
never give. Don't worry about it.
I'm sorry, I don't want to get on my voice. I have feelings about this.
It's not working.
Oh, no, okay. Your students can take the charge after you.
Yeah, I don't know. You know, we're just really getting underway with South Asian studies at Stetson. You know, I've been teaching courses on it, but we don't have a graduate department, right? And we do have a Sanskritist now, but he's actually a Buddhist scholar. So we have a ways to go. Stetson's it's 3,000 students, so we don't. It's hard to fund really strong graduate programs in such a small institution. But you're right. I mean, I would love to see there being chairs of Tamil studies throughout the United States.
Right.
Yeah, but we got to find some rich Tamils to fund those chairs.
Let your children grow up to be historians and artists and to major in the humanities.
Yeah, they're not going to get much support from their parents, I'm afraid. Computer engineering, medicine.
There are chairs coming up like that, but they go more for language studies rather than religious or
think
architecture.
Harvard,
That's also
right?
Tamil chair
Harvard,
for
Tamil chair.
more
Harvard,
language and literature that's not restricted to religious or spiritual.
Yeah.
But you're
Isn't
right.
it because of it's Indian? That's fine. I think mostly because India's tradition has been an oral tradition.
Yes.
So that is also a reason why these, temples have been seen as sources of faith. From the Bhakti movement, maybe 10th century AD, the age of questioning was long, gone. So there is no initiative. Even now, even these videos would not be seen by everyone. Even though if you go and tell people you're going to write, they're like, unique faith. So I think that is a major stumbling block, rather than the money or the researchers, because those things are secondary.
Yeah.
What is the motivation to do this? I mean, for Westerners,
No, you're absolutely right.
who are more you're actually looking at it from an intellectual standpoint. I think comparative mythology is kind of being taken up in India.
Oh, it is, okay.
Devdutt Patnaik has been
it kind of comes
writing-
in and out of fashion in the West, but
Devdutt Patnaik has been writing books on this. So he's been one person. I know there are a lot of controversies. They've been trying to make movies on these things, but they're problems because everyone has their own opinion about Shiva. There is like Shiva is Adi Yogi or Shiva is this, Shiva is this. That has been a big problem in India. The divisive nature of different sects, and they not allowing, this kind of video may not be taken up really well by other shy white, sections of society. I think.
yeah, no, I completely hear you. It's
That has
That's
been
an excellent
going on
point.
for ages.
it's
that
an
has been a
experiential,
problem.
faith-based, bhakti sort of experience, and people don't want a lot of analysis and comparative analysis and breaking down the symbolism and so forth.
Yeah.
That's not what they're going for.
Yeah, from 10th century AD, right? I mean, there has been, like, before that, it has been a more of philosophical thing. And we have so many books on philosophy.
Yeah.
Hundreds and hundreds of books on philosophy.
And you're saying that the average Hindu is not reading those books.
Oh no,
Okay, how many here have actually read philosophical treatises on a lot of the Sanskrit texts, like Brahma Sutras, but that's the point of the Gyanis, right? I mean, we have these texts.
Yeah.
You know, they allow few people to go into the depth of it, but that's how it is. You know,
no, the Bhakti traditions are much more popular than the Jnana traditions.
And as you said, it's a practice. It's not simply an intellectual, analysis, and it's a practice of reaching, achieving more.
And so it's challenging as a researcher to write something that balances the Bhakti experiential side with the intellectual, comparative, and analytical side.
You cannot be objective.
It's hard to do that.
Yes, you cannot be objective when what you write is going to be taken with faith. Unfortunately, you cannot be objective. But the Bhakti has been in other religions also. Islam is a Bhakti movement, and the same thing happens there. They cannot be objective.
Sufism, yeah.
Yes, and the same thing with Christianity also happened. So it's not only Hinduism.
It's a tough business to be in, a religious studies scholar, right? Because you got incoming from lots of different directions.
Yeah. And everything is hyper ideological now. It's just.
Yeah, we don't have Indian divinity school, even though India has so many religions. Harvard has one, but India doesn't have one, which is strange. We have so many religions which have grown in India, you have Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, Sikhism. But you cannot find one school which we have IITs and AIMS, but we don't have one religious school which is
maybe what's it called? Hindu University in Varanasi.
Yeah, it's popular for IIT now.
It's IT class? Oh,
I don't think it's...
Kali Yuga.
Yeah, it's nothing to do with religion.
No, this is a really good point that you're raising as to why these haven't been studied. But these documentaries that I'm doing, they're not really meant for an academic audience. Yeah. This is my attempt to go beyond academia and really just talk to ordinary people. So I hope it wasn't too scholarly or analytical. It was but it
was more descriptive than
Yeah. And that's it's phenomenology, right? This is what one sees, and sort of what you do with that is up to you, right? But you can give little hints along the way, right? So but this is not something that I show to my academic peers.
Why not?
Well, some of them are interested, definitely, in particular if they want to use it in the classroom, right? As something to show their students. These are pujas, these are temples, and these are traditions, and so on. But I didn't make this for an academic audience. Honestly, as a scholar, you're lucky if 1,000 people read your articles in scholarly journals. That's doing really good. But I'm a little more ambitious than that. I just decided, look, I'm gonna do work that more people can see, and that it's accessible to a larger audience. So, yeah, yes.
I want to say, I think it's really...
Yeah, go ahead. It's not working. That's not working.
That's not working. It doesn't matter. It's working. It's working.
This is working. Hello?
Yeah. I just want to confirm what everyone else is saying. I think it's such a valuable offering that you are making, because as Arthur Osborne presented Bhagavan's teaching to Westerners, so many Westerners have no idea of what they're seeing when they go to a temple and they see the deities, especially from a Christian standpoint, where they think it's all idol worship or something.
Well, unless you're a Roman Catholic or Orthodox, then you're very comfortable with murtis and processions.
I used to work in the Catholic Church, and I heard people say otherwise, But like Chadwick, we knew he was predisposed because his father was in that line of thinking. But a lot of Westerners, if they understand the rationale, like you're presenting it, I think it's a great thing. That's what I.
Well, I'm all for mutual understanding and respect across traditions.
Yeah.
I really hope we can move to a place where we don't need to kill each other in the name of our God.
Thank you.
Amen.
But I'm a lone voice crying in the wilderness with that, especially in today's world.
So, hello. So, besides this temple, you have visited the other temples. Have you visited other? Have you studied other temples besides the Tamil Nadu temples?
Yeah, I've visited temples all over India. The main ones like the Golden Temple in Varanasi and Taj Mahal and so on. But I'm very much, for some reason, the guidance has been to focus on Tamil Nadu. And in the last few years, the purview has changed somewhat, and I'm really deeply exploring the Mahashakti temples now, which are, I think, older and more primordial to understanding Tamil sensibilities and Tamil culture than the Shiva temples themselves. I think they're later. So, yeah, there are many manifestations of Mahashakti in Tamil Nadu, and many, many temples that sort of fly under the radar. The locals know about them, but Western visitors oftentimes don't visit them. You know, they go to the major Shiva temples on the temple tours, but they don't go to the Mahashakti temples. And to be sure, in some of the Mahashakti temples, like Madurai, Sri Meenakshi, and Sri Kamachi and Kanchi, non-Hindus are not allowed into the inner sanctum of those temples. You know, I was traveling with my wife who's Hindu, you know, who's Tamil, and so they somehow let me in. They sort of grandfathered me in. But if I was by myself, no way would I be allowed inside of those. So those temples, the Mahashakti temples for Westerners, are a little bit harder to gain access to. And I think there's a reason for that. There's a reason for that. They don't want, you know, people who don't have that sensitivity and that understanding being in those spaces.
And that note, I need to share with everyone that first time I went to Arunachala and to
Don't worry about
it. I went to the temple and I didn't understand any of it. I was looking at this magnificent structure. I mean, it stroked me like, oh, I could sense the energy and everything, but understanding it, I mean, all of it, I didn't. So, second time I go, Mr. Phillip Lucas was in town with his wife, and I wanted to go to the inner sanctuary. I know that's prohibited for a Westerner like me.
Sort of, yeah.
So, but I went with him and Hema, and she got on. When she saw my face that we couldn't go into the inner sanctuary, I was like, oh my God. So like, she saw my face, and then she got on the phone.
Yeah, she knows all the priests.
And she made it happen. And the group that day, we were all able to go into the inner sanctus and sit and
the puja,
and they put the garlands and the whole 9 yards. So thank you.
I had nothing to do with it.
And thank you, Emma. And he was surprised too. He was like, oh, we've been blessed. This is very, very, I mean,
that woman can move mountains. I'm telling you. And just with all of a sudden the priests are like, oh, Mahashakti, Mahashakti. they're taking, they're opening doors that normally don't get opened up. It's a mysterious process, but somehow she's got the siddha to do it.
It was.
Or siddhi.
There's no word for the experience.
Yeah, because we were, I was thinking about giving just a traditional tour, talk about this, talk about that, go from one program to the next, right at the very beginning. As soon as you said, we'd like to go into the, and she like makes the call, and it's like, change of plan. And they take us straight into the inner sanctum.
Yes.
And by the time that's over, we're all just like, the traditional tour didn't happen. We just sort of wandered around and kind of went to where we were supposed to go.
So the key was the devotee's heart.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And the beauty of India to me is that the heart, people can read it.
Yeah.
And respond to it. Regardless of the rules, regardless of the the official fences that are put up. It's like all that melts away if your heart's there.
I could not believe that it was happening. And when I sat there in front of the lingam, I was like, the energy that was in that place, and like for the whole week, I was like, this just happened? I was so thankful.
There's many graces that happen when devotees go there.
If you want to study Shakti, there are 36 Bhagavati temples in Kerala. You can go.
Oh my
And
gosh.
they are all small, but they have a story.
They don't even allow them to go near.
No, but you have to know somebody.
Very strict.
No,
Very
if
strict.
you know somebody, you can do it.
I don't
Yeah. I'm sure with Hema we won't have any problem.
Yeah. They will actually, tell you all the stories. Some of the Nambudris know the whole thing. And Kali Ghat in Calcutta, Mahakali, you have to look down. You'll see only the tongue,
No.
Yeah.
No, I mean, the infrastructure of Mahashakti temples is just ubiquitous throughout India. But in Tamil Nadu, it's kind of special.
But yes, there is. But Kerala Bhagavatis are also Shakti.
Well, you'll just have to invite us over and introduce us to the right people. I would love to go back. I was there once, but we didn't get a chance to go into too many temples.
36, but they're not as huge as this. There's no architecture, nothing. It's a small goddess, but it has got a lot of power.
Yeah, yeah.
Have you been to Samayapuram?
Oh, Mariamman.
Samayapuram? In Tiruchi. Near Tiruchi?
Tiruchi, that you have to go. That, you go.
Is that a Mahashakti temple?
It is a sanctum sanctorum if you go.
Oh, yeah, no, yeah. We were supposed to go there, and then we had to get to the airport or bus station.
Go to the sanctum sanctorum. You'll see small puffs on the thing. Yes, on the Devi. Because she is Shitala Devi.
There's one more near Kumbakonam also. People do red chilies and it's very powerful, they say.
Maybe somebody could organize a tour
And there is one in
for devotees to Kerala and Tamil Nadu.
Have you been to
Just the
Kumbakonam?
Mahashakti temples.
Have you been to
Yeah, I've been to
Kumbakonam temple?
Kumbakonam.
All the
Yeah,
temples?
yeah, there
You don't
is.
need the
I
Kumbakonam.
visited the same Shitala Devi Mariamman temple in Thailand.
Oh.
Yes, they worship the same way. They are Tamilians. And there is a huge Murugan temple in Malaysia. It's the tallest Murugan in the
Oh,
whole
right,
world.
yeah, it's up in the cave.
Cave. You have to walk a bit.
Well, I was raised Roman Catholic in St. Mary's Parish. So I'm very used to images of the Divine Mother.
Yes.
Right, and if you go throughout Europe, many of the cathedrals, particularly in Southern Europe, are dedicated to the Blessed Virgin. Jesus is often in an alcove somewhere, but the Mahashakti is front and center. So, I'm very attuned to that just through my own conditioning and experiences growing up. And I visited with my daughter many of these Marian shrines around Europe. So I see a lot of parallels with the Mahashakti worship, the mother worship in India, between that and Roman Catholicism. I mean, obviously it's understood slightly differently. She's in a little bit more subsidiary position vis-a-vis the big daddy, but in terms of, in India, she's much more equal or even superior, depending upon which text you're looking at.
Actually, in Kerala, Farley Richmond, who is a professor and University of Atlanta. He goes there. He stays with my relatives, and he does research in the dance forms, Kathakali and all.
Oh yeah, we attended a performance of that in Cochin. It was amazing. Did you want to announce something, Diana, about the rest of the day or evening?
Well, I think we're going to start the Vedas at, is that at 5 or cool?
And on the video, whenever you go on the pause, you are searching for it. Isn't that usually you just touch any of the
space bar should be fine.
Keys will stop the video.
Did we say 5?
Oh, perhaps. I'm not sure if this one does that. It depends upon what I'm showing. This is in QuickTime, and I don't think that will work. I think you have to hit that particular button. But thank you, I'll try it and see. That would be nice.
I'm not good at computer, but I will just try to.